Welcome to the Under the Dome podcast. I am your host, Ben Belden. Today we've got a quick check-in of Notre Dame recruiting type things and some other Notre Dame football type stuff. We're in the middle, well, I guess the end of June. It's been a while since you've heard our voices, but we're glad to be back recording this YouTube video. If you are new here, make sure you're checking us out all over the web, YouTube, all over Twitter. If you or if you search Under the Dome podcast, you'll find us, find me on Twitter and all that good stuff. We're just about everywhere. We're really trying to push out some video content on the Under the Dome channel on YouTube. So make sure you're clicking subscribe. But if you're not into the video aspect of it, we're on iTunes and wherever you listen to your podcasts. So find us there as well. So that out of the way, I've got two fine young gentlemen with me here today. First, we have a longtime podcast guest, and that's Nathan Erbach. Nathan, how's it going?
I'm doing great, Ben. How are you?
Just living the dream, just enjoying the life of a teacher in the summer. So that's wonderful. And then we've got Mason Plummer as well. I don't know why I almost just forgot your last name for a second there, Mason, but my bad. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How's it going?
Well, I don't know. It's the dog, named after Rocket Ishmael seems to have stopped barking for the time being. So, good boy, Rocket, and hopefully that he didn't hear my name or his name from the other room, and whatever. But anyway, before we get started here, we've got a couple things to get out of the way. Like I said, make sure you're checking us out all over the web. And if you are looking to get to any sporting events this summer, make sure you use SeatGeek. It's a ticket search engine that never loses sight of the fan experience. Simply go to their website, type in the name of the team that you're looking for, choose the date. SeatGeek will give you a great chart of the stadium where there you can choose seats and tickets based on their score system that gives you the best value. If you've never used SeatGeek before, we've partnered with them to give you a great deal. Apply the coupon code THELOOP Sports. That's all one word, The Loop Sports at checkout, and it'll take $20 off your first purchase with SeatGeek. So we're very happy that SeatGeek has partnered with us. One thing that I forgot to mention is that we are affiliated with The Loop Sports. So if you are a Chicago sports fan of any kind, go to theloopsports.com and you can kind of check out some of the things that they're doing with the White Sox and the Cubs and the Blackhawks and all of that good stuff and everything in between. So SeatGeek, The Loop Sports, $20 off your first purchase. Thanks in advance. Okay, guys. So it's been a long time since we talked Notre Dame football, and we're going to start with recruiting because Notre Dame is just absolutely killing it on the recruiting trail in 2020, especially, which is obviously the recruiting cycle that we're talking about here. I don't know. As I was telling you guys before we clicked record here, I'm not the recruiting guy, so it's almost hard for me to ask questions. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of kick it to you guys, and I'm going to, sort of step out of this conversation a little bit, and I'll interject questions and play the role of the casual observer, I suppose, and ask the questions that I anticipate that maybe other people will want to hear. So Nathan, let's just kind of start with you, and just give me your overall impression on what Notre Dame is doing on the recruiting trail, and then Mason, you can take it away after that.
Yeah, I mean, so May and June have been really good for Notre Dame on their recruiting trail for 2020 and 2021, to be completely honest. I mean, they've landed, I don't even know how many recruits overall, but starting like May 23rd with Chris Tyree, who's a borderline 5-star running back, which Notre Dame hasn't really been able to do when they had Autry Denson as the running backs coach. I mean, starting there, and then now we're almost into July, and they've landed probably I don't know what you would say, Mason, 10 or so commits in that time frame. And like I said, between the 2020 and 2021 class, it's been some of the best recruiting that we've seen in Notre Dame in a long time. And I think if you go back to, I usually go back to 2018 as kind of that start point, or maybe even 2017 for the recruiting classes. Starting at that point, it's just every year gets better and better, and you can really see the staff really picking it up on the trail. And obviously, winning helps. I mean, going 12-0, going to a college football playoff helps a lot. And if they can continue that kind of trend, I don't see why 2021 and then like further on, like with 2022, just doesn't continue that trend of getting better.
Mason, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think winning has a lot to do with it. Back-to-back 10-win seasons are really key in recruiting. Guys want to go to a winning program. And, I agree with everything Nathan said, really. The 2020 class is coming along, and 2021 has the potential to be even better, ranked as number 1 or number 2, depending on where you're looking. So, yeah, Notre Dame's catching momentum on the recruiting trail at the right time and getting the athletes they need to succeed.
I've been kind of on this kick that anybody that will listen or read the things that I write, I just feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I just feel like Notre Dame is at a place where, and I think a lot of us feel this way, but perhaps you guys can verbalize it a little bit better, that Notre Dame's in a place where, if this momentum continues and the way that they've developed players, especially since, they've kind of overhauled the coaching staff after, an abysmal 2016, it just sort of feels like Notre Dame is building up to being a place where instead of every once in a while or every third year, we see Notre Dame get to, close to contention. It seems like they're getting to a place where it's going to be contention every year after year. I mean, I'm not saying college football playoff every year, but it seems like we're getting to a point where we can expect them to be in the conversation every year, and recruiting has a lot to do with that. I mean, is that a fair assessment? Or am I kind of off?
I think it's mainly a depth thing, to be completely honest with you. As we all know, like especially like defensive line, and even like maybe in the secondary, depth has been a big issue for this team. In the Brian Kelly era for the most part, and now we're really starting to see the benefits of defensive end, defensive tackle recruiting, and then maybe even some more star power in the back end with guys like Kyle Hamilton coming in, landing a Lohi Gilman, even though he wasn't a stud recruit out of high school, but getting him to transfer from Navy. And then just the development process. I think they're really targeting guys that even when they're not crazy like 4-star, 5-star caliber, there's just traits that can translate to the college and maybe even the NFL level with either length, athleticism, speed, whatever you want to call it. I think that's really what's getting this team to possibly be like what you were saying is, maybe not every year going to a college football playoff, but on a consistent basis being, a 10+ win team. And I think depth has a lot to do with that.
Nathan.
Yeah, I have to agree. You saw how key depth was against Clemson. You lose your best corner, and then all of a sudden everything just falls apart. Notre Dame's recruiting at key positions. Shoring up the defensive line is huge. The two of the most important things in football, getting after the quarterback and then having a solid quarterback that can distribute the ball. And Notre Dame's been recruiting the quarterback and defensive line positions extremely well as starting to recruit better at defensive back, at least better than we've seen in the past. So, Notre Dame's headed in the right direction. Hopefully we'll be contending not next necessarily every year, but hopefully every couple of years we'll be in the hunt.
So one thing that I've heard you guys say that I feel kind of the same way about is this the idea of the defensive line. And I actually wrote about this last week at some point that, it seems like the winning formula in college football these days is develop just a monster defensive line and just kind of turn them loose a little bit. And if you've got a good defensive line, then you're going to contend. I mean, the two teams obviously that have followed that blueprint the best have been Alabama and Clemson, who are, the teams that compete for the most titles over the last, however many, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it's been, especially for Alabama. So to me, I can't remember, and I've obviously, followed Notre Dame pretty closely since, I was, I don't know, a teenager at the very least. I was a fan before that, but then kind of, paid more attention as I, started to understand sports. But I can't really remember a time. I mean, I can remember growing up and watching like Justin Tuck play, and I can remember Stephon Tuitt play, and I can remember, a couple other studs, but it doesn't seem like we ever had as many studs as we have now. I mean, now we can talk about, I was writing a defensive line article the other day, and I'm just like, all of these guys, I listed about 10 guys in the article that are going to contribute and that I feel pretty good about, that are going to be pretty darn good. Nathan, I think you wrote on this, so we'll start with you again, but like, is this the best defensive line Notre Dame's had since when?
Yeah, I did write on this. It's kind of funny. I mean, it's hard to argue with the 2011, 2012 team with the results they had. I think from at least a starting duo standpoint with Tuitt and I think at one point you had Ishak Williams, who was maybe had that little kind of a breakout year with them. You had Sheldon Day on that defensive line. So you had some good guys on that roster. But I think from like a 3 deep standpoint, it's really tough to point to a team since maybe the Holtz era that had Aquara, Kareem, Adiuk and Ogundeji. What's his Ovi Agufo. A lot of people really like Ovi Agufo this year. Who else? I mean, I'm spacing out on some names right now. I know you guys have some, but Jameer Jones might even redshirt. That's how much they like these defensive line. And then from a recruiting standpoint, I mean, they got guys coming in next year in Riley Mills, Jordan Patelho that are legitimate 4 possible 5-star talents down the road. So I from a complete depth standpoint, I think it's the best in the Kelly era, and I think that means something just because they've had the talent in the past from like maybe their couple guys that are starting, like you were saying with Tuitt and even Day and guys like that. But I don't think that if those guys went down, it would have been a major issue, and this year it might not be.
Mason, I'm going to switch gears a little bit with you because I think Nathan covered that one pretty well, but we'll start with you on this next question.
Mason.
I had nothing to say. I was hoping he wasn't going to ask me because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't have anything else to add. That was it.
I was hoping you guys were going to bring me some players. I was like, I can't think of any guys' names right
I didn't want to interrupt you, but like Dalen Hayes came to mind.
Yeah, no, Dalen Hayes. The fact that I can't name Dalen Hayes is an issue, I think.
Well, here, secondary question to that. I mean, I think the guys on the outside get a lot of. I mean, Julian Okwara gets a lot of accolades, and then Dalen Hayes has come on last year, and then Nathan mentioned Ovi Agufo and Nana Osafa-Mensah, if I said that correctly, is going to be a guy that's going to be a stud eventually, but doesn't even have to play next year because Notre Dame's so loaded. But what about the interior of the defensive line? Like, what are our thoughts? I mean, is this going to be, and even from just not even just a recruiting standpoint, but just this team recruiting all the way down the line, how do we feel about defensive tackle, the inside type of guys?
Defensive tackles are right. In my 3 irreplaceable defensive players article, I actually listed Kurt Heinisch as one of the irreplaceable players, which was a shock to some people. I had some of my friends reading like Kurt Heinisch. I was like, yeah, man, like I don't really trust the depth at the moment. The depth's going to be there, but at the moment, I don't trust it. And Heinisch, from a productivity standpoint, he's not going to be a Jerry Tillery by any means, but what he brings to the team is unmatched by the depth behind him. And Nathan, I'm curious to see what you have to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, you have Heinisch, who who's been there for a couple of years now, is going into his junior year, so he's just kind of reliable, like you mentioned. He's not going to be a stud, but he's just he's just a good college football player. It gets a little interesting after that, just with MTA being injured last year. And not playing too much, but I know a lot of people really like him, and he showed out during his freshman year. Same with like Jason Adamaloa. He didn't play too terribly much as a freshman, but he came in as a big time recruit. And then guys like Jacob Lacey and then Howard Cross, I think are specifically Lacey. It looks like he's going to be in the 2 deep. And the staff really likes him as a freshman, and I've heard some good things about Howard Cross too. So it's young depth, it's possible depth that could be really good, but it is a little bit concerning just with the youth.
Right. I do like Lacey a lot, but right now, if you were to say that let's say something happened to Heinisch, God forbid, but if something were to happen to Heinisch and you told me Lacey's starting week 1 against Louisville, I'd be concerned.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
One guy that neither of you guys mentioned that I want to bring up fast, mostly because I left him out of an article that I wrote and kind of felt bad about it, and was actually kind of called out for it a little bit, but is Jamion Franklin, who had the I don't know if it was an upper leg quad type tear or injury. If I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head, but from what I understand, from what I've heard from people, is that he's pretty well healthy at this point going into fall camp. I mean, he's at 100%. I mean, what are our thoughts on Jamion Franklin moving forward?
Go ahead, Mason.
Do we have any thoughts on Jamie Hunt? I should have asked one of you specifically. That's my fault.
No, yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I think he's solid. I think he'll compete with Lacey. Heinisch has the spot as long as he stays healthy. But yeah, I think he'll compete with Lacey at the 2 deep. I think it's Lacey's position to lose at this point. Franklin could contribute, but it's hard to expect a ton from him, especially coming off that injury.
Yeah, I mean, when they recruited Franklin, I liked him as a depth piece. I never really liked him as a future starter unless things went wrong. But that's not a bad thing. And like I said, like the depth is as good as ever, and he just kind of adds to that. And so if he can be healthy this year, the torn quad definitely worries me a little bit more. But hopefully he's healthy and can contribute.
All right, so let's. We're not really switching gears here, but kind of what switching back to recruiting more specifically, I suppose. I want to go to each of you guys, and we'll start with Mason again on this one, but just pick a guy or two that Notre Dame has landed recently. I mean, it's been a long time since we recorded a podcast together. So just pick a guy or two that you're really excited about and tell me why you're excited about him. So, Mason, go ahead.
Yeah, I could not be more excited about Jay Brunell committing to Notre Dame. It could be a little bit of recency bias as he committed just yesterday, but stealing one from under Michigan always feels great. And Brunell was a guy I liked from the start. As soon as he kind of flashed at Irish Invasion, I started really looking him up, and I watched his film, watched his camp film and everything, and I really liked him. And I see him – I've seen this comparison a couple times as a bigger, more athletic Chris Fink, and if he can be that for Notre Dame, that's awesome. Fink was a guy that helped a lot in his recruitment. Brunell, I think Nathan and I talked about this, is going to be, as Nathan calls him, a dude, and I totally believe that. Brunell, I think he has a chance to. He has a chance to be a contributor as soon as he comes on campus, and he'll be a guy that Notre Dame fans will know very soon.
Yeah, Brunell's just one of those guys. Brunell's just one of those guys that I think outplays his ranking. He's got good measurables. He has good speed, and he plays with a chip on his shoulder. So I think those guys succeed at the college level. So I definitely agree. I think Brunell's going to be an underrated guy. I'm actually going to switch gears over to the 2021 class, at least according to Rivals, and then even 24/7 has him as a top 100 guy. But Blake Fisher, out of Indiana, actually is pretty close to Notre Dame, and like I said, Rivals I think has him at number 14, and then the composite rankings over on 24/7 Sports have him in like the top 80, I believe. He's just one of the top offensive tackles they've landed in a while, and that's saying something at Notre Dame, considering they land top offensive linemen on a yearly basis. But one thing they really needed to do in these next couple classes was land offensive tackle talent. And with Tosh Baker in the 2020 class, who's a borderline 5-star guy himself, and Blake Fisher in 2021, I think they're really solidifying the left tackle spot. More so than anything, which was a desperate need for them.
In you guys' opinion, has Notre Dame kind of switched up the way that they recruit? I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about how, they're recruiting a lot better. And they've, I don't know, and Nathan has been on this podcast before talking about how they've done really well in like complementary classes. But, I kind of think back, Brian Kelly's been here for 9 years, going on 10, if I remember correctly, yeah, that sounds right. He obviously had success in the first part of his career, going to the national championship in 2012, and I don't know, but he didn't have the same type of success recruiting, I suppose. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, what's the difference now in the way that Notre Dame is recruiting versus how they're recruiting in 2013, 14, 15, and kind of leading up to whatever the heck happened in 2016. And Nathan, we can start with you on this one.
I think number one is the staff. Brian Van Gorder couldn't care less about recruiting. So, and that showed that not only showed in the talent that he brought in for the most part, but it showed through his coaching. And, I think, getting Clark Lee, Chip Long, Terry Joseph, I think those guys, specifically Brian Polian, I think those 4 guys are really, really good recruiters. Guys like Todd Light and Del Alexander are solid recruiters. I wouldn't call them like amazing recruiters, but they're also just great coaches overall. So yeah, number one is the staff. Obviously we talked about this a little bit earlier, but winning helps. I mean, you got two years in a row of 10 plus wins coming off the college football playoff. So guys want to play there. And then I think they're just doing kind of going off what I said with the staff. I think they're just doing a really good job of covering their bases more so than they used to. So they're not just focusing on so for the example with the wide receivers, Jalen McMillan and AJ Henning were guys that were on the top of their list for a really long time. And for a while, at least, I think most Notre Dame fans would have said they would at least land one of those guys on top of Jordan Johnson. And they both went to different schools. They got on Jay Brunel right away. They offered him prior to them leaving for other schools, but they were on him and they got him to come to Notre Dame. And he was the guy that wanted to be at Notre Dame. And then same thing with guys like Xavier Watts and, even some other guys that they've kind of pushed away more recently just because they know they don't need them. But they're just covering their bases. You look at cornerback recruiting, I think it's the same way. I mean, they've missed on some 4 stars, but they went out and found 3 stars that they thought, had the potential to be good players down the road. So they're not sitting back and just, whiffing on, a certain position because their top guys go elsewhere.
Mason, do you have anything to add to that, or did Nathan do that?
I'm a talker. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he took the only thing I had was the very last thing he said. Actually, the only tangible difference besides the staff that you're really seeing is Notre Dame was there. It's just a typical thing every year. You see that they see their top 1 or 2 targets go elsewhere, and then they, like as Nathan said, they whiff, and then all of a sudden they're landing guys that it just seems like just come out of the blue. Now they have backup plans. So, you're not going to land everyone. That's just not how it's going to happen. And so they have backup guys that they feel confident in. And so if you don't land the top of the list guy, then you're still okay, and you're landing still very solid players.
So all of this being said, how are we feeling about 2019? I mean, we've talked about this through the spring a little bit. I've talked about the fact that, I think that I don't see any reason why. I think there's a valid point to be made that, Notre Dame could be similar or better even talent-wise, and still a step back, I suppose, as far as the record is concerned, because their schedule is more difficult, going to Georgia, going to Michigan, and going to Stanford to end the season. I mean, those are 3 tough games, and then they've got the other tough ones kind of mixed in between for different reasons. But how are we feeling about, 2019? Like, what overall, I'm not asking you to make a record prediction or anything like that unless you want to, but I'm just I wanted to gauge your thoughts because it's been a while since we talked, and things have happened and we've talked about other stuff and people have different perspectives. So Mason, we'll start with you on this one. How are you feeling about 2019? What are your thoughts?
I am cautiously optimistic. I will go ahead and say, just why not? I think 10 wins would be a great season. That would be winning one of Georgia, Michigan, or Stanford, which I think they can do. One of the 3. 10 wins should be good. It might seem like a letdown after a 12-0 season, but I really think 10 wins is where you want to be with how difficult this schedule is and where you have the team. I think this team is similar talent-wise to last year, but the schedule is just so much more difficult.
Nathan.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. The one thing I'll say about the schedule being hard is, to a certain extent, I don't really care that it's hard. If you lose all 3 of those games, then you're not a good team, in my opinion, or at least you're not as good as you're supposed to be. There's other programs that play, hard schedules and they go to the college football playoff. Alabama and Clemson. I mean, I know they play some cupcake schools every, the Citadel and random schools like that, but the ACC and SEC aren't cupcake conferences. So, they're sitting there going, 12-0 every year or 11-1 every year. And, if we want to call Notre Dame a college football playoff team on a consistent basis, they need to do the same thing. Overall, I think this team is similarly talented, or if not, maybe like a little bit better, like you guys mentioned. And I don't see any reason why they can't have 10 plus wins on the year.
Go into the season. So thinking about the schedule a little bit, and Nathan, I love the point you just made. other teams. I mean, you don't care about the fact that it's a hard schedule. I get that, and I like that stance. But going into the season, like, are you at all, or either of you, surprised at all that Notre Dame is like a double-digit underdog going down to Georgia? Does that surprise you? Do you? I mean, I don't remember what the line is. I feel like it opened at like Georgia at like minus 13.5 or something like that. Does that surprise you that odds makers, look at this Notre Dame team? And I mean, we've talked about a similar talent type thing, and I tend to agree. And I would also kind of say that, I think the overall talent's the same and that maybe it's just dispersed differently. But I don't know. I feel like there's still a level of disrespect for Notre Dame, and maybe it's the recency bias of, the last time people saw Notre Dame on the field, they were getting blown out. I don't know. Are you surprised at all that Notre Dame is such an underdog against a team like Georgia, Mason?
In a way, I'm not, but in a way, I am also. Notre Dame has recently, especially on the national stage, they seem to lose and lose big. Other than Clemson in 2015, then Georgia 2016, I believe, which they kept close, but still lost. 14 seems like a lot. I would put it at more like 7 or 9. Probably one score, but I don't see Notre Dame being favored, especially in Athens. And yeah, I mean, 14 might be a lot, or 13.5. But yeah, it might be fair though. We'll have to see. Notre Dame needs to show up for the big game.
Yeah. And I don't know exactly what the line is. So if someone's listening to this podcast and is like, they're actually only a 12-point underdog, you idiot. Like I didn't look up the line. So, but it was big. It was bigger than I thought it was. But Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really surprised. They seem to always, whenever they play an SEC team or Clemson or whoever, they always seem to be pretty big underdogs, no matter what their record is. Outside of that, though, I mean, I think they don't tend to get blown out during the regular season in those big games. I mean, Georgia in, 2018 or 2017 comes to mind. And then like obviously Clemson and Florida State, those were games they probably should have won. Just looking back at, a few different plays that, didn't go their way. It's always in January or whatever that they seem to blow those games. So, no, I mean, I'm not surprised just because of, who Georgia is and how talented Georgia is. But at the same time, I don't think Notre Dame loses by 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this real quick. Georgia currently is 10.5 points. Like I say, I feel like it was bigger than that at some point, but it's maybe changed a little bit. But still kind of, I don't know. Still kind of, I mean, in a 10.5 point game, 10-point game could be a close game till the end and, tack on a touchdown at the end. So I guess it's not all that surprising. I just kind of thought it would be, kind of more like a 1-score type of a thing just because of, what both of you guys just said. But all right. There was somewhere I wanted to go before. Oh, okay. So controversial take here that I was kind of thinking through, not necessarily out loud, but I was thinking through the other day. And we'll kind of end with this. Now, there are a lot of reasons why this isn't going to happen right away, but as a Notre Dame fan in 2019, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate. I want to throw out the disclaimer that I haven't bought into what I'm about to throw out there, I guess is what I'm going to say. But would Notre Dame maybe possibly, and Nathan maybe knows where I'm going with this, I don't know, maybe not, benefit, and it was Nathan who, comment he just made that made me think of it, from going into the other side of the ACC, playing an ACC schedule plus USC, Stanford, and Navy, and then maybe playing in the ACC title game. Would they benefit from that at all? Nathan, you're shaking your head.
No.
Tell me why.
They play a national brand, man. I think that's what makes Notre Dame awesome, and I think that's what makes people hate Notre Dame. I love the fact that they play whoever they want, whenever they want, and they sort of even fucked that up when they started playing the ACC to begin with. But I kind of like it just because they play some good schools every year, and they get that, that East Coast. They're kind of diving into Virginia and even down south a little bit more because of it. But no, I don't want to screw with the fact that they want to play Big Ten schools. They want to play SEC schools. They want to play, like I said, whoever they want, whenever they want. And I don't really care if people disagree with that when it comes to, a lot of people seem to think that Notre Dame has a shit schedule sometimes, but I think those people don't know what the hell they're talking about.
I have to put the explicit tag on this now.
He got fired up.
Hey, man, scheduling fires me up, man.
That was awesome.
I've never had to put the explicit tag on a podcast.
I can't tell you how many scheduling arguments I've been in with friends and stuff.
Mason, I know that's probably hard to follow up, but do you have any? No, if you've got anything.
No, that's just the theme of today. Nathan's hard to follow up, but no, I don't think they benefit. Notre Dame's been independent for so long, and to change that would just I don't know. It's like changing the way that the lines are in the end zone. You just don't do it. And it's just how Notre Dame is, and that's how you keep the brand the way it is. Notre Dame wants to be the best, and to be the best, you have to play the best. We'll play the best from the Big Ten. We'll play the best from the ACC, the best from the SEC. You see that in future scheduling too. I think we play Bama in 2024 or something, but it's still something. And if you want to be the best, you have to play the best. And staying in one conference doesn't really mean that to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm on you guys' side, to be honest, but I just kind of – that's why I did the big-time disclaimer that I did beforehand, that I don't necessarily subscribe to the theory. But I guess I do hear an argument that you could make that, Notre Dame can go and they can play – and I don't have the ACC, schedule right in front of me, but play the other half ACC, play, their general I don't know, just like regular type of games that they normally play because they're playing 5 games in the ACC already, I guess is kind of the argument that – that it can be made there. And then if you still play, your Stanford, your USC, and then you schedule Navy wherever the heck you want, and you can still play in different places throughout the country. And I know you disagree, Nathan, but
just imagine if you don't throw Notre Dame on Notre Dame, like in terms of like their brand, and put it on any other school, and imagine them playing Stanford, USC, and Navy non-conference, and then playing their conference schedule, and have them complain about how hard that schedule is. I mean, that's insane. Imagine playing Clemson and Florida State in the same year in the ACC, and then playing Stanford and USC. That's Notre Dame already does that, to be completely honest with you, but it's just crazy. Like all of a sudden people would think Notre Dame has a good schedule, even though they already do. But it's just weird. I don't know.
That's like half your games that are difficult. Very difficult.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what Nathan just said it. Kind of what I was going for is that Notre Dame kind of does it anyway, and that's kind of where my argument comes from. And it's not really, like I say, I'm really, really playing devil's advocate pretty hard here, but I don't know. To me, it's almost sort of seems like, and the argument is that Notre Dame plays a pretty hard schedule already. Why not go into and I'm pulling up the ACC football because it's divided. Why not go into the ACC Coastal, play teams like Miami, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, Virginia, Pittsburgh, Duke, North Carolina every year, and then you get, I think, one crossover game, and then those, USC, Stanford, and Navy or whatever to keep the tradition alive. I mean, I get. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I get what you guys are saying for sure. I don't know. It was something, I guess, that was kind of posed to me that I was thinking out loud about. And I was like, it's not the worst idea in the world, especially with the fact that, because people point to the TV deal all the time as a reason why Notre Dame shouldn't join a conference because all of their games are nationally televised. Well, we live in 2019 now, and pretty much every game you can stream in some way, shape, or form, especially with, the ACC network that's coming and that type of thing. So I don't know. Like I say, I don't have a strong opinion that Notre Dame should join a conference. I actually really am more on your side, but the teacher in me likes to play devil's advocate from time to time and get people riled up. And like I say, I have to put the explicit tag on here or do some editing or whatever because of what Nathan said. And I'm kind of excited about that. I'm not ragging on you, Nathan. I think it's funny, but
I just love the idea that they could play, their traditional rivals that they don't play every year now. Purdue, Michigan State, Florida State, Miami. They play them because they're with the ACC now, but Boston College, same thing with the ACC. But I like the fact that they can and this was prior. I'm kind of talking a little bit prior to when they were with the ACC. I just like the idea that they can play all those teams, not have to worry about, the NCAA, limiting them to playing one of them a year or something like that. And that kind of stuff bothers me.
Yeah, it's true. If you did that, then there's no room for like Michigan on that schedule. There's no room for. I mean, you can only play so many teams. But I don't know. Real quick, secondary question: does Notre Dame add a 13th game at some point?
Maybe against Hawaii.
Like against Hawaii or BYU?
That's a good idea. With how we recruit in Hawaii, that'd be a really good idea just to get down there. Also, to add to just a small comment of what we were saying earlier about joining a conference, the last thing you need is, since we're explicit, is Michigan fans or Michigan State fans just bitching about, oh, you guys join the ACC because you're scared to play us. That's what they're gonna say. They're gonna say, oh, you're scared to play us. That's why you're backing out. No, we're not.
Oh.
The only reason I said Hawaii was because there was a big thing I think it was after last year, where Brian Kelly said something like, well, the only team we could play if we wanted to add a 13th game to the end of our schedule would be Hawaii, because I forgot the exact reasoning behind it, but it was something about how they don't have a game that week or whatever.
From a recruiting standpoint, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Get Napoleon out there one or two times more a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you just make a 2-week trip out of it and go to either Stanford or USC the last week of the season and then finish in Hawaii.
Don't even come back to Notre Dame. Just stay there and chill.
Right. Win or lose, you're chilling.
Right. Yeah. So, Jack Swarbrick, if you're listening, just schedule an away game at Hawaii every year. They don't even have to come to South. Yeah. And then fly us out because it was our idea.
Slap the sign, pay for this. Come on.
Okay. Anything that I missed that you wanted to talk about for the good of the order? We've gone for a pretty long time now, but
Nathan, you got anything?
No, I think we covered the basis without getting into too much detail about name recruiting wise. I think that's a plus for me, because I always name names and Ben's like, who the fuck's that?
Big name drop guy.
Nathan said one cuss word and it just opened the floodgates.
No, I don't got anything.
Okay.
But, Jay Brunell's a baller.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
More catches than AJ Henning in his career. Mark it down right now.
I bet. And you were saying that they're going to be compared because they committed on the same day, and that's totally true.
All right. Well, listeners, hopefully you had as much fun listening to this as I had recording it. Make sure that you are checking us out all over the web. I could give you all the things, but really just search Under the Dome somewhere and you'll find it. If you find us especially on social media, there's links to all of our iTunes and YouTubes and all of that. So find the social media stuff and you'll be directed everywhere else. If you stuck with us this whole time, we thank you. Keep coming back. If you're new here, spread the word. Tell your mother, your brother, your uncle, your sister, anybody who's a Notre Dame fan, or even if they're not a Notre Dame fan.
Unless they're under the age of 15.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I don't know what to say to that. There was one more thing I wanted to say. You just got me off topic. You're you guys are really like my students in high school. Anyway. I just lost my train of thought. So anyway, that's it. Make sure you're subscribing, writing a review, doing all of that stuff. I still can't think of I'm trying to talk my way into figuring out what I wanted to say, but I can't figure it out. So until next time, thanks for listening and go Irish.